Yes!
Coming from somebody who's mained the Warlock class since the earliest days of Destiny 1, it always seems that the Warlock class has had viable supers in neutral game, but not a lot of options for PvP based exotic armor. The Warlock class is the least played of the three classes, but if you ask anybody who uses this class in PvP what their go-to exotic armor is, it's incredibly likely that they'll say Transverse of Steps. And I completely understand why, because Destiny 2's PvP prioritizes movement over almost everything else. If your movement game is on point, it's automatically denoted that you excel in disengaging from disadvantageous instances, strafing in 1v1 gunfights, as well as utilizing evasive tactics to make it incredibly difficult for an opponent to defeat you. Transversal steps are so highly coveted for the same exact reasons that the Hunter's Stompies are, in the sense that both of these exotic boots make your movement game better. Yeah, even though these exotics enhance your movement game, by no means are they mandatory for your movement game to be on point, because a player with a good grasp on the game can maneuver around just fine without using one of these exotics. Also, it's not outlandish to say that exotics such as Transversal Steps and Stompies aren't suitable for all playstyles, because they aren't. And to be 100% honest, I'm definitely one of those people, which is why the exotic Warlock gauntlets known as Ophidian Aspect is always my go-to exotic armor for PvP. Now you may ask, why am I suggesting Ophidian Aspect over Transversal Steps? Well, to be honest, I'm not insinuating that Ophidian Aspect is better than or more viable than Transversal Steps, because these exotics do two completely different things, thus fulfilling two completely different roles. Ophidian Aspect grants passive benefits to actions that you'll be performing naturally, while Transversal Steps makes you move faster and saves you time of manually reloading your weapons by reloading them for you, provided that you're sprinting. So what does the Ophidian Aspect do, you may ask? Its exotic perk known as Cobra Totemic states that weapons ready and reload very quickly. Melee range is extended. Yeah, that's pretty vague, so I figured it was much easier to actually show you what's going on. When you really think about it, Ophidian Aspect grants you similar effects of the perks Outlaw, Quick Draw, and Snapshot, plus the added benefit of increasing your melee lunge range, meaning that this exotic armor is a 4-in-1 package deal. And in my opinion, now is the best time to give Ophidian Aspect a spin, because the reload perks Outlaw, Fitting Frenzy, Rapid Hit, etc. were nerfed some time ago. Granted, the animation speeds of reloading, swapping weapons, and aiming down sights may be a tad bit slower than those perks, but I would rather use Ophidian Aspect to have multiple weapon handling benefits than one, since there aren't many, if any, weapons in the game that can roll 2 reload speed perks at the same time, and that wouldn't be very viable if it was possible anyways. Also, I felt the need to mention that Ophidian Aspect does stack with reload speed mods for gauntlets. On the screen, you will see footage of me reloading the Chattering Bone pulse rifle without the Ophidian Aspect, then with the Ophidian Aspect with no pulse rifle reload mods, then one mod, then with 2 mods. Now, I didn't really feel the need to do a reload speed test with enhanced pulse rifle reload mods, since there's really no point in using 2 of these because of Destiny 2's reload speed cap. The flat reload bonus plus a single mod is more than enough if I'm being perfectly honest. Also, I tested Ophidian Aspect with the Outlaw perk to see if they stack, and it doesn't seem that they do. And if you can see a difference, please let me know, because I definitely cannot. Now, as much as I adore the weapon handling benefits, my favorite benefit of Ophidian Aspect is the melee lunge range. And if you don't understand how melee lunge range works, I'll go ahead and explain. Hunters and Titans have a melee range of 4.5 meters, whereas it's 5.5 meters for Warlocks. For the Warlock class, without Ophidian Aspect, your Guardian will lunge forward to melee an opponent provided that they're within 5.5 meters away from you. Anything beyond that, and you'll just slap the air. However, Ophidian Aspect grants an entire extra meter of lunge range to that of your base melee, bringing it up to 6.5 meters, which is insane because as far as I'm concerned, that's a comfortable distance that higher impact shotguns can one-shot enemies at. Now, if you're wondering why the Warlock class has more melee lunge range than the other 2 classes, it's because it was Bungie's way of compensating the Warlock class for having a slower melee speed. Back in Destiny 1, the Titan and Hunter classes could throw a punch faster than Warlocks could, but the Warlock class's base melee was a ranged palm slap that operated in a vaguely reminiscent fashion as a force push would. This made the Warlock's melee range one of the most hated attributes of the entire class, and apparently Bungie thought that it would be a good idea to address this in Destiny 2. So when Destiny 2 first came out, all 3 classes shared the same 4.5 meter melee range, but the Warlock class kept its slower melee speed animation, and it was incredibly noticeable. I personally hated this because it was basically impossible to win melee fights against the other 2 classes in PvP. But when Season of the Worthy released, the Warlock class's base melee range was increased from 4.5 meters to 5.5 meters, and this buff made a day and night difference. And with Ophidian Aspect, you have an entire 2 meter advantage over the other 2 classes, enabling you to close the gap from farther away and follow up with a second melee by the time your opponent is able to throw their first punch. I also like to add that the melee range bonus does not affect range melee attacks such as Celestial Fire and Ball Lightning, and I mention that simply because I had a funny feeling that somebody was going want to ask. If you find yourself unable to decide between using transversal steps and Ophidian Aspect, I got a tip for you that'll make the decision-making process a bit easier. The traction mod for boots and a lightweight frame intrinsic perk for legendary weapons grants a pretty noticeable mobility boost. Pair this with Ophidian Aspect and it'll be vaguely reminiscent of the mobility benefits granted by transversal steps. But here's another idea. If you like both of these exotics, I would suggest using one of them depending on the PvP map. For example, a bigger map like Widow's Court, I would advise that you use transversal steps over Ophidian Aspect because you'll be able to cover a lot of ground and get from point A to point B very quickly. But when it comes to smaller maps such as Anomaly or Retribution, there aren't a ton of benefits of running transversal steps, in my opinion at least. Alright everybody, that does it for this one. As I said before, I'm in no way promoting Ophidian Aspect as the superior exotic armor in comparison to transversal steps. My goal is to inform everybody that if transversal steps doesn't suit your playstyle, then it's likely that Ophidian Aspect will. Now if you made it to the end of this video, do me a favor and thumb rest of that like button until it turns blue. And if you're new to my neck of the woods, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and click that bell icon so you don't ever miss a video of the most elite gaming content. But with that being stated, 1LHD is over and out. Y'all take it easy.